Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. This is the very, very special looking forward post-Olympic edition of the Swim Brief. I'm joined, as always, from Irvine, California at yet another swim meet, Erik Weiken. Erik, how are you?
Doing great. It's been so nice to be away from that Houston humidity, 85 degrees and not dying. So, but
just standing on that pool deck, it's like cool and crisp in the morning, and
even with the sun reflecting off of the water and the concrete, it's still not as hot as it is in the Gulf. So I'll take it.
True story. The first time I went to a swim meet at Irvine, I forgot my sunglasses. So I spent an 8-day, summer national meet just like
going blind,
squinting at the pool deck. That's not.
I really hope that's the YouTube snapshot right there.
Right, me going. We're at the point where we're hunting for thumbnails. We're actually trying to make ridiculous faces so that the YouTube algorithm goes, this would be great. And because I'm also feeling a little bit insecure because Erik ends up being the YouTube thumbnail so often. I feel like it's 90% Erik, like 9% me, and then 1% of the time Joel. You might be able to sneak in there.
That's the story of my life. Yeah. That's everything.
The air quotes got you out on that one, Chris. That was good.
Yeah, and sorry, I blew ahead on this one, but joining us from the great Pacific Northwest, Joel Rawlings. Joel, how are you?
Doing great. I'm the 1%, but the other end of the bell curve, 1%. Yeah.
Have a lot of people been reaching out to you since the Olympics because they're so impressed by your Ledecky prediction, or how's that going for you?
No, when you're the harbinger, I guess you don't really harbinger of destruction and doom. People don't reach out to you as much as you think you
would. You don't end up getting as much validation. Like people are just like, shit, he was right. Oh man. Okay, so we're going to do what I asked you guys to do, and what we talked about ahead of time was we're going to do some forward-looking stuff. We'll sort of put to bed a little bit the looking back at the Olympics, although inevitably that's going to be part of the conversation here. But we're going to kind of try to peer into the crystal ball and predict the future. We've got a short Olympic cycle coming up here. And what I thought we could do is just sort of offer our almost completely unqualified opinions on what really famous swimming people, famous in air quotes, Lori Rawlings, okay, could do here in the near future. We've each prepared something, and then, somebody's going to do their little presentation, and we'll go back and forth about it a little bit. So Erik, you're first up. Hit us with your prognostication or your advice.
My TED Talk.
Yeah. What's your TED Talk?
Yeah. This cycle, we're going to see some shifting. We're going to see some people shopping around. There are some people who probably could use a little bit of a change of pace from time to time. All of these swimmers and coaches pretty much have a connection to each other at the national level, and being able to swing out to somebody's training location for a few weeks probably does anybody a bit of good. So definitely seeing a bit more of that. Two in particular need to make some wholesale changes, and those would be Katie Ledecky and Simone Manuel. They need to take control of their training, and they're going to be moving on. They both need time off, go on vacation, film some more commercials, just reevaluate your situation and see what you're going to be able to do to push through these next 3 years. And if it were up to me, and just trying to look at the calendar and see things through, and as we use Joel's brain to evaluate what Ledecky has been doing poorly, we then take that information and push it forward. And what I could see is I did a little bit more detail with Ledecky because it's just a little bit more solid.
More to work with.
Yeah, and then Simone being on the short end of the races, it feels like there's a bit more flexibility for bouncing it and just finding our right fit. But when I see Ledecky, I look at just flat out taking a break until October, like just not being in the water at all in August, not in September, and then honestly just going back to a friendly old face and traveling out to, Wisconsin and spending spend a 3-month cycle with Yuri. I think they've been doing some really great stuff up there. It's hard
some
to
commercials with Giannis while you're up there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Get that synergy with the Bucks
type stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it just clean things up, stretch it out. I mean, it's pretty clear that she had success with him a long time ago. I'm not saying that she needs to go there for an entirety, but just spend some time in a place like that with the kinds of people you can trust in. And if he's already shown some great results there in Wisconsin, and although she's not a backstroker, I mean, getting somebody into the finals again in the Olympics is nothing to brush off. So, doing a cycle there, ending it with a meet, just seeing where things are at, then go out to Sandpiper. And if she's lengthened that stroke out a bit, clean things up, get a little bit more in sync, and then try to train it, go with that young group that's out there and see what they have going on and just kind of necessarily build it up. And then do a 3-month stint at Florida. I'd love to see her just get in the pool with those guys. She's going to be able to handle, a lot of that work. It's just a matter of making sure that she continues to hold the stroke that she's trying to get back to that we saw in 16. And based on the way those guys swam and how they came off the walls, those details aren't neglected out there in Florida. So it doesn't seem to make any sense. Like you wouldn't go ahead and go down there. And it's not a bad place to be and take that training and take it into Worlds. I'm assuming that she's making the Worlds team while out with the Sandpipers and then pushing through to Worlds when she's training in Florida. And then from there, just evaluate it and then settle into a program in that fall of 22 and then, crush everything on the way to Paris, so to speak. I think it'd even be worthwhile. I don't know how Coach would be able to handle it based on his antics at the Olympics, but I would be curious to see if she just went down to Australia and just trained with Kewan for a bit.
You're just throwing the whole kitchen sink at Ledecky right now, Eric. You're just
honestly, why not? What's the worst that could happen?
I can think of a lot of bad things that could happen in this scenario.
The next 3 years.
But I'm going to let you
just plan the next 3 years. Hey, I'm in charge. I am the swimming czar at this point. All right.
Yep. You have the conch.
She has come to me.
Yeah.
She has come to me.
Okay.
I'm giving her my ideas as to the way things go. I'm not saying she's got to stay down there and get screamed at, but it would just be funny to him to be able to pull things and be like, Ledecky's doing this. And she's 2 lanes over, and she's gives that look. But I think if she can, shift her dry land focus back to mobility and stability and get things right, she's got an excellent opportunity to have an amazing Paris, because the engine's still there. It's not going to go anywhere. She's still going to be able to do everything. But I just think it's a matter of cleaning stuff up. Joel looks like he has something to say.
Yeah, Joel, jump in there, because I got so many things.
The last part you talked about is the key. Is again kind of looking at what she's doing. Again, as we age, everyone needs different things as far as their dry land, as far as maintaining a healthy body. It just seems like the muscle mass she has right now is just. It just doesn't seem as sustainable. Again, the weird thing is we're in a time where athletes are changing so much, and so we can't always say, well, this doesn't work for everyone. But we've never seen a distance athlete that's that muscular. I mean, she's a strong woman. I think definitely changing something like that up. I think your point about Australia, though, I think right now, I think American swimming is going to have enough time trying to digest the idea that we're just not always going to get a gold medal in a relay. All of a sudden, we're sending our best athletes off somewhere else to train. I think that would freak everybody out. all at once. I think there's a lot of really good places. Again, if she wants to go on a tour and hang out, I don't know her mental makeup where again, training with someone every day might be more of a pressure cooker than what any of these athletes need coming off this Olympics. Just hearing the sound bites afterwards, like that last women's relay. The one part I heard was like, it's finally over. Right. And I'm sure people have said that before. I know we've always thought that before at conference meetings. It's such a pressure cooker, but I've never heard that. And so again, I don't know if we just have more access than ever before, but for them to say that, I mean, that's a reality that Olympics was a lot harder on everyone than ever before. I felt more sorry for a lot of these athletes than ever. I mean, used to be like, man, I want to get back and coach, or I want to swim. I'm all jacked up. This one, I'm like, I hope they get some time, because I really feel bad for all of them. I mean, being locked in their rooms. And then the parts you always hear about the Olympics is so cool is the Olympic Village, hanging out, they're playing cards, they're talking to people from Sweden, wherever it is. This is like, go back to your room, and then as soon as you're done, you're out the door.
Yeah, right.
And so I think it's a different Olympics than ever before. But I think with Ledecky, I think definitely mobility and things, finding some continuity with training. And I kind of wonder about the idea of some of these pro teams being kind of established at the universities, where Stanford, I mean, they didn't look great. When you have the best distance swimmer and the best sprinter, like not really performing the best. But part of that tie-in is how the university is tied into what their COVID restrictions are, say for like in Indiana or everywhere else.
Right.
Florida, it's kind of the Wild West as far as COVID goes. It's like Wisconsin. Wear a mask. It's your free choice. Breathe on my kid all you want. It's like,
right.
So Florida could be a good option, mainly because the restrictions are none. Yeah. It might not be great for her health. She might die.
Right.
But it'd be great for her training. Or Sandpiper, same thing. The restrictions of private club or something like that will have different ramifications than a university setting.
So I have two things.
Before you go into it, Chris, I'm not saying that she stays in Australia and trains. I'm saying like a 2 or 3 week.
Sure.
Go visit the Gold Coast, just like be in paradise in a particular part of the year. Let's say that she does happen to decide upon someplace cold, like she decides to go back to, she goes to the promised land in Wisconsin, and she decides to train in Australia for a few weeks in the middle of the winter.
All I know is when you're going to buy like 20 packs of beer for $4, it's not a great place for any athlete.
I have two things to say about Ledecky, and I've already forgotten one of them in between when I was listening to this inane blathering about Wisconsin. I think the big thing for Ledecky to decide, and I honestly, this is such a cop-out, but I can't decide for her, is I think that she has got to simplify her program. So she's either got to go, like she's got 2 lanes to go in. She can go in the lane of the 800 and the 1500, right? And just be sort of a pure distance swimmer. These are the events where she is quite obviously most dominant and most competitive with the rest of the international field. Or I think she can go 400, 200, lean into that muscularity that Joel points out a little bit. But I don't think it's sustainable for her in the long term to swim these massive programs. And I just see, one of the things I think about more and more and more is as we have athletes sort of go through multiple cycles in the sport, things have to adapt over time. And I think her program is probably long due for an adaptation. I think it's a really hard decision to make because, as I said, the longer events, she won them. She swam better in the shorter stuff. I mean, I know her 200 free individual was not very good, but her relay performance was outstanding. Her 400 free was really, really good. She just didn't beat Titmus. And as far as whether she should go to Australia, I just want to say, based on the very, very limited amount of Dean Boxall that I got, I'm not a Dean Boxall fan. It has nothing to do with the celebration. It has nothing to do with the celebration. I think if I ever coach somebody that beat Katie Ledecky, be it, 5 years from now, be it 20 years from now when she's a master swimmer, I would make Dean Boxall look like Pete Sampras or Tim Duncan, just to, give you guys, I would be so out of control. I would scare at least 2 attendance that we're trying to keep people in a confined space during the game. So that part of it, I don't object to. I think it's quite natural to be very, very excited when something like that happens. Again, I'm operating on a very limited set, like the sound bites that I was presented in the Olympics, but it still bothers me how he sounded kind of like, like an abusive boyfriend in interviews where he's just sort of like, we'll see if she's all right. We'll see if she's good enough to swim for me. Like, get over yourself, man. All right. Erik, on to Simone.
It's not necessarily a copy paste, but it's certainly along those lines with I'm just trying to wrap my head around being, essentially on COVID break, like out of the water for whatever period of time that was. And then in a matter of 11 months, 10 months, 11 months being overtrained when you're training for the 50 and the 100. I mean, that's some pretty intensive emotional overload and neurological stress. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around, unless she's one of those athletes that has to do a lot of aerobic to be a sprinter. I know what's her name out of A&M, Burl. The French one. Is that right? I don't know. But she's definitely trained more like a male sprinter. Is Simone of that ilk? Is she going to benefit from something like that, or she has to do 2100s, 3100s, whatever long course to have the kind of right swimming? And is the 200 going to be a focus in her program in 3 years? And then if so, it really kind of determines what she's doing around that. And what are you doing with your time outside of the water? How are you monitoring it? Like we talked about, you're at Stanford. What are you doing to figure out stress? You tracking biological biological markers? Are you paying attention to your cortisol levels? Are you taking off that extra session when you need to? There's a difference between wanting to and having to. And maybe she was doing a lot of stuff because she wanted to and not because she had to. It's just, for whatever reason, maybe the anxiety got so much within that where it's like, we got to cram everything into this 11 months. There's no way to get around it. And then just crushed yourself trying to do all of it. And then was she doing too much in the weight room too? Like, is she going to need to be more on that same path to mobility and stability and not so much power? I mean, she's a strong person. It's just a matter of maintaining strength and not having to get any bigger. And if she does move, what does she benefit from? Does she have the kind of personality or training style where she's going to be able to go to a place like here in Irvine with Salo and do some of the atypical stuff and a lot of speed changes and things like that? Does she need just a time of that to be able to rewire some of that connectivity with the water and then go somewhere else where she needs that? I don't know if she benefits from time at UVA or NC State, or does she go and hang out with Dressel in Florida? They just tag team and they both move to Florida and, live amongst the COVID-free country that Florida is and make it happen there. I mean, it's just, I really kind of at a little bit of a loss. I know I claimed that I wanted to speak to Simone, but the more and more I thought about it, it's just like, I really can't get past what happened in a 10-month span.
Yeah, there's not
to overtrain in 10 months.
And there's not a slam dunk like you should go. Like you look at Sandpiper, who's having a lot of success in distance free right now. So I think a lot of people would sort of be like, have a similar suggestion to you, like, oh, if you're a distance swimmer, you should just at least go out there and see what's going on and maybe get some inspiration.
Yeah, just take 3 months.
But for sprinters, it's sort of like, where to go? I mean, I think it's been a long time period where sprinting has been a relative weak spot in the United States, especially, I should say on the women's side. And so there's not an obvious answer of like, hey, this place, this is where sprinters are just knocking that out of the park. You should go there. Joel and I at least are huge Cal Berkeley homers. So, we probably would love to see that, but that seems to be like, asking somebody to switch from
even if it's a possibility that she would be able to, that would even allow that, because it's usually kind of like Cal summer thing.
Yeah, sending Simone to Cal would be like sending Kayla Ledecky to Australia. Yeah. I think more than anything, like I think as swim coaches, we always think about the physiology of it. We're always thinking like, okay, she's overtrained, probably way too much EN3 kind of work, strip the glycogen. But there's a lot more obviously to overtraining. I mean, I have no idea what a female professional athlete goes through, much less a African American female athlete that now is the one person everyone goes to. If you want to ask a question about any person in swimming, we'll go to Simone. Well, African American, well, now we're definitely going to Simone, and we just keep on piling and piling and piling and piling. I have no idea the pressure she's under, like travel arrangements, making sure Speedo contract or wherever contract is met, making sure nutrition is made, finding rent for Palo Alto. Good luck on that, and all the other things that go with it. I look at a lot of these athletes and you just kind of go back and you start connecting the points, like the gymnast, Simone, getting on the plane, like, oh, we already have a goat pillow for you in first class, And so, like, again, it's like she wants maybe 8 hours of, like, I don't have to connect on social media for 8 hours of this flight. I can just, and here's a goat pillow. Oh, by the way, you're going to go off and you're going to make a bunch of gold medals for the country, right? It's like there's no downtime at all. And I wonder how much of this is just the pressure cooker that we've social media has created. I'm too old to even understand Twitter. But these kids are like nonstop 24/7. We always bash on millennials. But the ability they have to accumulate just information and just process it is amazing. But now it's gotten to the point where that faucet is so wide open. There's no downtime. There's no time to decompress. The friend always used to say, it's like, it used to be when the album was over, you have to get up, there'd be a little sign so you could flip it over, and then you start the album again. This is like you're going from car to nonstop. There's all information on the phone. You get to the pool. That's 2 hours of maybe not getting social media information, but you got all this other stuff. There's no escape. And so I wonder if that's a bigger part, and that management is actually a big part of what needs to happen. Because I think, every kid can get a Fitbit. Every kid can get a Whoop band or whatever it is that's going to measure the recovery. But this emotional level, mental recovery, there's no little band you can wear to go, by the way, you need to get off of social media for a minute.
Yeah, look.
That was a big phrase I put in my notes, was emotional load. I put that exact phrase on there. It's like, we don't have that.
And I think, honestly, I think I speak for all three of us. I know Eric's with me on this, and from what you just said, Joel, I'm thinking you are as well. Social media emotionally is poison. It's poison. How much poison can you tolerate? I think, to achieve some of the other goals you want to do. Obviously, if you just completely turn that faucet off, it's very hard to sustain life as a professional athlete. Basically impossible to do it. But how much poison can you tolerate, and how can you manage? You basically titrate that poison for you, because it does take like a tremendous amount out of you.
But it's also it's what feeds the monkey. That's where that's the revenue stream.
Yeah.
You're not going to get paid by attendees to a swim meet. It's going to be paid by clicks.
And I heard secondhand about a swimmer that I won't name, not to shame them personally, but they made a semifinal at the Olympics, and they literally spent the entire night after, the day the before that morning final was about to, they made it from the semifinal into the final, and they spent the entire night, subsequent night, on Instagram, celebrating, because it was such a big accomplishment for them to make the final. They were just completely gassed in the final, not only physically from not sleeping and sort of, being there, but just the emotional gas. Even if people are on there going, you did amazing, you're so you're great, oh my God. And that's sort of probably what makes you want to lean into it. I can remember even as far back as when I was coaching teams internationally in Denmark, which is, every year moves farther and farther into the past. It's sort of like all of Joel's, good coaching accomplishments. They just sort of like
my one coaching
right.
farther.
Just keeps on getting farther and farther away. But even then, I'd said, like, if somebody did really well, I'd say like I'd basically be like, please turn off your phone and just avoid social media. Like, please avoid, please, because I could see the way that poison set in. All right, Eric, is that enough on that?
I think so.
Okay. We're going to have more on Stanford later, and I think I've already guessed that the title of this podcast is going to be "Don't Listen to This If You're Greg Meehan," because it's going to feel, I think, by the end of this, like we're really picking on Stanford in a way. But I'll offer some caveats on that for when I'm going. Joel, what do you got?
My thought going to the future is like, is again, you see like trends in all of sport. I always like kind of talk with you, especially on when we talk about like thinking about more about basketball, because that's a spot where athletes, in the face of the athlete, they figure out a way to start to own that a little bit more and monetize that a lot more, where now it's a lot more about, you don't have favorite teams as much. You got favorite players on teams. I was listening the other day to this one podcast. They're talking about how, people don't have favorite football teams that you just grew up with. If we weren't like Packer fans growing up, we'd get our butts kicked, Now it's, whatever your favorite team was when you played Madden, that's probably going to be your favorite team. And so it has nothing to do with location anymore. It has everything to do with your history with that team on a separate thing. And so the sport is evolving. So I watched that Olympic cast and thinking NBC has no idea what its product is anymore. And right now it's just scrambling to try to figure that out because they spent so much money on it.
Right.
And I think the product is Caleb Dressel. He is going to be the new face of swimming. It's not because of his gold medals, but it's his honesty and his openness about all the things that are going on behind it. He's called himself like the biggest nerd. I'm like, that's it. Now he's got a huge generation of people that will be behind him 100%. He's got sleeves, but he's also very open about how he can't talk to his parents or his wife at a meet because he'll start crying. He'll break down. And that being in touch with that emotional level, any coach who's like 55 is like, well, you just got to toughen up a little bit. This year of, it's not tough enough. Again, we're seeing now in the Olympics what happens when you overwhelm a kid emotionally, and that overtraining of emotions, and of course how the irony of us on social media talking about the perils of social media. Well, the thing is we have no followers, so we've got that going for us, but we also get no money off of this. And so again, they're doing that, and they need someone that's going to help. And this is the idea I have is there has to be some sort of entity that comes forward and starts to go, this is what you need to do to have a career, to sustain a professional career in a non-professional in a sense sport. It's always kind of the cute idea of like, oh, you're going to be a pro swimmer. That's great. So that means when you're 22, 23, you get a couple extra backpacks, maybe $15,000, and you go a bunch of these gold medal clinics teaching kids how to do fingertip drag drills, and so that's how you make your money. And then it ends as soon as you find a real job. Right. But again, look at these athletes now, they're 30 and still doing it, and they have to figure out a way. And unfortunately, this is the lost generation that we're going to just chew up and spit out as far as like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to be able to sustain this? How are you going to make a YouTube channel, Instagram, all these other things, manage that, and perform. And we're seeing again at this Olympics, everything has changed on that. Again, it didn't look fun. It looked very unfun for these people because they're just surrounded by this. And you go 3 years of anonymity, no one gives a crap. Then all of a sudden you've got ads, you're going to be on late night shows, you got this, everyone gives a shit about you. And then the next day that door closes again, you go back to the pool, you got your medals. And we always hear about that kind of like, you win the gold, you think everything, I've reached my dream. And then you realize, well, now what? I've given a lot, and it's not like, maybe you can become the next Rowdy Gaines. There's only one of those jobs, and he's sitting on that one still. Beisel pushing him out.
Come on, Beisel.
But again, there's
for you.
a lot of like call for, hey, let's get an ex-swimmer to come in here and speak to our, gun club or whatever is making money next. So professional entity needs to come out, and I think Caleb Dressel is going to be the guy that guides that, and I think he's going to be the guy that brings a lot of people into the sport. Not because, again, you're looking at here's toughness. It's like here's actually vulnerability and someone that's successful with that vulnerability.
Yeah. Looks like a bodybuilder, looks like a badass, cries to his family.
Well, he's Superman. Then he puts the glasses back
yeah,
on.
Right.
He's talking about, yeah.
That's a full package. Yeah, I think, like I'm just listening to it. I'm like, wow, there's a big business opportunity for somebody going forward to help athletes like this manage, even just do some harm reduction with some of the stuff that they have to engage with in order to make it as a professional athlete. And it's couldn't be more timely. I mean, as we look at this era where, Erik and his corporate overlords are just throwing money at younger and younger people just to, get them to wear that Speedo, whatever that is, that check mark. What would you call it? The check mark? Like Nike
kind of a
swoosh,
boomerang.
the Speedo boomerang on their suit.
But I think to kind of piggyback on what you're saying there too, with helping that out is I remember talking to a coach who had a swimmer that was ending at a junior year and was going to go professional.
Yep.
And she was like, he was like, this one woman's going to go out there. I've been doing all the travel arrangements. I've been doing all the meal arrangements. I've been setting up the meets. I've been doing all this stuff. Not like I deserve that, but it's like, now those are all things that no one ever thinks about that you're going to be doing. How are you going to get to that meet? What meet are you going to go to? How are you going to be prepared for that meet when the day before you've got your clinic you've got to do, or the commercial shoot you've got to do? So there's all these things that a lot of athletes don't think about and that needs to be laid out, because all of a sudden you're going from 1920 to you're a pro, be a pro.
Yeah, and let me give an additional shout out to The Water Is My Sky, because actually that very topic gets covered. You're following Connor Jager in the movie as he moves from being at University of Michigan to being a professional swimmer. And he talks about the fact that he thought, basically leaving the academic environment, he thought he was going to have a lot more freedom. But it turns out, no, he's at the Fitter and Faster tour teaching fingertip drag, as you put it, Joel. He's traveling a ton. He has to get organized himself around a lot of this stuff. And so he actually found it to be more restrictive to be a pro than to be a college athlete. So it is for sure an interesting perspective on that. Erik, anything to add before we get to the final moment everybody?
I'm definitely in lockstep with what Joel has to say when it comes to all of that. And you're right. I mean, just Caleb is that face. Just there's everything about it that you see in it. It is 100%, and it's 100% genuine. Like what you see is what you get. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more things about him and about athletes like him come out and just destigmatize the need to be, this rough and rugged and, swimmer who can handle everything, because it's not. It's funny that we saw the whole thing with Michael Phelps, and, it's like, well, it's happening to Simone Biles in real time. And it did happen to Michael Phelps. It just took a little longer for it to really truly come to the surface, and it ended up with him nearly killing himself in his car, driving through tunnels at 95, 100 miles an hour. It's just hers is twisties, and his was just a complete breakdown when everything ended.
Yeah.
So, but I think I don't want to say her last name, but Coach Kristen, you've had her on this podcast before a while back. She does a lot of life coaching.
Chef Tunis.
Exactly.
Confidence bracelets. Yes.
Yeah. She was doing a lot with athletes, and then she was actually able to just speak about the athletes that she was able to help, and speak to the things that she was able to help them manage. And that's one of those pieces, and hoping that getting more people into the sport like her, and having more, because you need more. It can't just be her. There's got to be a lot of people like that to manage the entire U.S. national team. It can't just be one woman with all 50-plus athletes. So there's going to be a lot of need for life coaches like her.
Yeah. Okay. So the headline of what I'm about to say is that friends should not let friends who are trying to achieve international success in swimming go to Stanford. And I know, I don't know that that's even a particularly controversial take, because one of the things I think we do on this podcast is we take stuff that, you know, your average swim coach is gossiping about poolside, but it would be completely petrified to say out, like in a very public forum with their name attached to it, and we just go ahead and say it. And that doesn't always work out well for me or either of you guys, but I hope that people listening sort of get the sense of this is the kind of conversation, an honest conversation that we have. We've not edited it down so that, you know, things can be sort of a little bit more palatable or refined or whatever here. So just to talk a little bit about Stanford, I'm going to set up a few caveats first. You know, it's going to sound like what I'm about to present is picking on Stanford, but I think that the methodology or the way I'm about to sort of go point by point through some swimmers on that roster is worth it for anybody that's considering going to a college. You should be doing this. Look through their roster, okay? Look for people who swim events, a similar event set to you. Look for people that you can somehow compare yourself to that are on the team right now and see how they did, okay? And that would be a piece of advice I would give internally on my own team to kids that are engaged in the college recruitment process. And I think, again, to return to the original point, that if you're somebody that's aiming for international swimming success and you look at your comps on Stanford's roster, you might reconsider the decision to go there. It seems like not many people are doing that, but I think maybe they should. Many of the people I'm about to talk about did improve if you look at their short course performance. And I think that's important to consider when you're talking about a college program. You know, there's a perspective that I think is pretty valid out there that NCAA coaches are being paid to do well in the NCAA. And who's done better in the NCAA over the last, 4 or 5 years than Greg Meehan? Nobody, okay? He's been incredibly successful as an NCAA coach, and ultimately that is what Stanford is paying him to do, is to get people to swim very, very fast in short course yards, get enough of those people to swim fast in short course yards that Stanford wins an NCAA swimming championship. Even though he was the head Olympic coach, his primary role is not necessarily to prepare people for international competitions. The other thing I want to note before I get into these, I got a lot of things, is I recognize that coaching, the higher level you get to, the harder it is, right? So I don't want it to appear as if I am, a Joe age group coach who's like, well, 100% of my kids improved this year. Why didn't that many kids on Stanford get better? Okay. I'm about to go like swimmer by swimmer with you. We've already talked a little bit about Manuel and Ledecky, who I think pretty objectively showed some regression in their swimming during their time at Stanford. But I'm going to look one layer beneath that at some of the swimmers who I think, were reasonably sort of like within range of aspiring to be on an international team or an Olympic team for the U.S. and see how they did. And then something that you guys referenced earlier is we recognize that swimming at Stanford has been really hard in the past year. It's been hard to be swimming in California. It's probably been hard to be at Stanford in particular. I think elite universities have been a lot more cautious when it comes to COVID. And I'm generally on their side in terms of that caution. So don't interpret anything that I'm about to say as necessarily a direct criticism of that cautiousness. These are just things you have to weigh if you're going to be an international swimmer. You have certain goals to get to a certain level. I can remember advising a swimmer from Denmark who was considering, a lot of different options about where they were going to swim in the U.S. And one of them was a very, very elite academic institution. And they were sort of asking me, they were like, hey, shouldn't I be going there instead of, this is, I think it's not too much of a spoiler to say they ended up at NC State. That could be like 10 different Danish swimmers, but I said like, okay, you're right. People are going to recognize this other elite academic institution and nobody in Denmark knows what NC State is, but what is your goal? Is your goal to go to a very, very prestigious university, or is your goal to compete internationally for Denmark? And the overriding goal was to compete internationally for Denmark. They went to NC State, made the right decision, I think, if that was their goal, and achieved what they set out to do. Okay, so let's get to, I just took a gander at this is the Stanford roster that's available on their website, and I did my own sort of personal arbitrary filter for people that I thought were sort of knocking on the door of or at least some people who if I were their coach, I'd go, okay, it's reasonable for you to make a goal to be on a U.S. Olympic team or a U.S. World Championship team, something of that nature. So just go.
Before we go too deep, like not naming names, I think if you just go numbers wise, that might be a good way to go. I'm not sure where you're going with this. I get tense. And so again, the number wise, or are you going to just go like, hey, this person didn't achieve? Because then they're like, I don't know, we need it.
I'm gonna look at how well what kind of development they showed while they were at Stanford. Okay.
All right.
So what level were they at when they came into the school, and where are they now?
All right. Just so you can like put a little mark on there. This is where Joel's tension level went up pretty high. Go ahead.
Okay.
Joel, I don't think this is going to stop you from being able to coach masters. Being associated with this.
I'm not worried about anything. You guys go ahead.
Really, the title of this, I said Greg Meehan should not listen to this. Hopefully, because as you point out, Joel, we have no followers. He won't listen to this.
I'm sure.
So great news. All right. So Brooke 40, she made the Olympic team. I'm going to start with a real positive one. Okay. She made the Olympic team, and that is no small accomplishment, right? Ledecky made the Olympic team. Simone made the Olympic team. Okay. As I said, I saw a bit of regression in the other two. 40 actually did improve to make the Olympic team. She was a 158, 200 freestyler long course coming into Stanford. This past summer, she went 157, and that was good enough to make the Olympic team. Okay, so put that one first in the column. The next swimmer is somebody, I don't know, this is a lot of tough names in here that I didn't get the chance to ask anybody how to pronounce. Anya Gators, okay? She finished 9th at Olympic trials in 2016. And she basically stayed at that same level 5 years later, okay? At the end of, this was as a high school swimmer, she was 9th in the 50. And she made a semifinal. I think she finished 15th at the 2021 Olympic trials in the same event, okay? Isabel Gormley. This is somebody who I know her club coach. We had a lot of excited conversations about how well she was doing. She had a lot of success for the U.S. at the junior level, got down to a 439, 400 IM going into Stanford. This was her freshman year. She went 453 at the Wave 2 Olympic trials in that event. Hannah Kukurugia. Okay. Some of these names, honestly, I had sort of forgotten about them. And I think that's sort of indicative of the development that's happened. She came into Stanford as a 59 long course 100 butterflyer and a 209 200 butterflyer. Now, 209 for sure in high school puts you within striking range of making a U.S. Olympic team. This past summer, she went 102 in the 100 fly and 213 in the 200 fly. Okay. Lucy Nordman, she was 10th at 2016 trials in the 100 backstroke. 2021, she won a 102 in the 100 backstroke. She's nowhere near making a semifinal in that event. Okay. Taylor Ruck, I just want to name her. I'm leaving her completely out of it because I think, with the double Olympic red shirt and everything else, I don't know how you can even include her in this conversation. Morgan Tankersley. Okay. Here's somebody that was National High School Swimmer of the Year. Now, obviously, a lot of that was based off of short course yards performance. She had some ways to go with long course stuff. She got a 413, 400 freestyler. She got to 412 during her time at Stanford. And then finally, you have Allie Robb, somebody who was 9th at Olympic trials, 9th or 10th, I think, coming into Stanford, and was basically flat. She's very similar to Gators from earlier, sort of stayed at the same level as around. Now, I think, like I said, coaching at this level is hard. You would not expect that everybody, or even maybe a strong majority of people, would progress and move forward. But I think if you're going to be the head Olympic coach, you want to see, more of these people improve and develop over their time. And it may have nothing to do with Meehan, as you referenced earlier. It may have a lot to do with the infrastructure around Stanford that, Stanford continues to be a very, very attractive place for people to go. It's an elite university, that has a lot going for it in that regard, that, gets people really excited. And a lot of people in swimming, very rightfully so, have a lot of goals that have nothing to do with making a international Olympic team, and have way more to do with what they're going to do, what they're going to go pro in after that, right? And in many ways, I can't argue with the value proposition of a place. Well, actually, I have on my blog argued with the value proposition of expensive private universities, but it's sort of offset when somebody else is paying a good portion of the bill, which I think is probably the case in a lot of these instances. So that's my TED Talk on why an international aspiring swimmer should not go to Stanford. What do you guys think?
Erik, you want to go or should I go? What do you want to do?
Light it up, Joel.
Well, I think obviously it's. I mean, you can go through a lot of universities like this and find a lot. Even again, I know you said you went arbitrarily and just pick 10 athletes or something like that. I think the thing is, the initial premise of why a swim coach has a job at a Division I level anymore is the one where we think we know what it is. We think it's, we'll get everyone to swim faster. It's like it's not, and especially a place like Stanford. It could be 1,000 different things that we have no idea what it is. And primarily what it is now is like, are the athletes happy? Because the senior exit interviews are going to keep you or lose the job for you. Now with the transfer portal, are they going? Are they staying? Are they achieving academic success to help balance out other university programs? Are they doing a lot of things? I've always told, athletes, I don't counsel international athletes. I mean, you had more of that in Denmark. Mine was just always like, what's the best school you can get into at the most reasonable price? It's not going to leave you in debt. It's going to leave you with the best resume at the end of the day. And swimming should be like 5th on the list. So obviously these are two different things we're talking about. We always think, when we think swimming, we think Michael Phelps. Well, and then there's only one. There's a whole pyramid underneath that. And the majority of people I deal with are first level, and before that level are still another million. The idea again is getting that education and opening the doors. And again, the pressures of being at an elite institution are different for those athletes. The pressures of COVID and all the other things are going to be different from those. So, I mean, you can look at a lot of different times and things like, I think you're absolutely right though. You look at, if I were an incoming freshman, I want to go to the best school I can get into, because end of 4 years, probably your career's over. but now your new career starts, and that's going to be your tagline is I went to this university. The next thing is obviously how many people do they have in your event, and what's the improvement? Because that's so easy to do, 2 clicks. I'm going to look at 2017 incoming freshmen. I'm going to look at 2021. Well, this is a bad year, obviously, the COVID. So if you went 2014, 2018, are the kids in my event dropping times? Are they doing well with that? Where are they now? And again, if you're looking internationally, are they still going on? So we look at like Florida right now. There's going to be the new flavor of the day. Obviously, I mean, they did graded everything on,
and so pumped up on this podcast. We're all saying great things about them, and
yeah, but 2 years from now, all of a sudden, like, hey, you know what? You can't. And then we start dropping that. So kind of reacting to it. But what I like is the idea that you're saying of going proactive with that. It doesn't have to be this team. You can look at any team. What are the kids doing? Are the kids happy? Is this someone you want to be around? I don't know training parameters at Stanford. Greg seems like a nice guy. Again, it's like if I'm Barry Bonds, I'm not going to go for the best manager. I go for the team that wins. If I'm someone that's going to go on with my life, it's the nice thing is you go into someone that's a nice person. Because I used to talk with my coaching friends. If I had my son or daughter ever swam, where would you want to send your kid? Or you have these kids on your club team. Where would you like them to enjoy their career? We don't always think we're going to be your fastest at. We think because we're not talking, like you said, that elite trying to make the Olympic team. We're talking about, are you going to enjoy your time there? Because those 4 years are done so quick. And so I think that's a factor that we got to kind of throw in there. Again, the kids have more access to information than ever before. And kids had more access to their own career than they ever did before, where they can change, they can transfer out, they can make money at different places. Yeah. And so there's a lot of factors that are going to come into it. Again, if a guy had a bad year, I was there the year when the bubble suits, and everyone should have been coach of the year that year because we all had like 10-second drops. And this is the year of COVID where I think everyone is going to be like going, shoot, obviously I shouldn't be in this profession. None of my kids, again.
Yeah, open up Meet Mobile and look at either of the Speedo Summer Championship meets right now and look at all the red on the right, on the right hand. And it has nothing to do, it doesn't mean that all those swimmers are bad or their coaches are bad.
Right. It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah. That's all mine. So mine was kind of a meandering, like, oh, we got to all be easy on ourselves.
Now I think we got the point, Greg. You can be as mad at me as you want, but Joel is your friend. Joel wants to be your friend. Joel's a good guy. Okay. Chris bad. Joel good. Okay.
I'm not going that far either. But go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
No, I don't disagree with a seriously critical analysis of what's going on internally. I'm assuming that he's going to be inward looking and being like,
sure,
what we're doing isn't working. Like if he's really truly about the international portion of this, it's got to be. You gotta take it as the coach. Like I didn't get the job done, or there's something I missed. It's not necessarily a discredit to him as a human being. It was a difficult year, as you said. But there really does have to be a reevaluation of where you want to go as a kid if that's your level, assuming that everything stays as it is. So if there is going to be some of that dialogue, like, are you going to be able to be that recruit that asks the hard questions?
Yeah.
Not to say that they would necessarily be listening in on this podcast, but you have every right as a recruit to talk to a coach that's got kids at the international level and be like, well, 2021 didn't go well for Stanford. I'm number 3 recruit in the nation, whatever, in this little scenario. And it's like, why would I choose Stanford right now to achieve my international goals when you have arguably 2 of the best women in the world in your program and they didn't reach their potential, and you have a lot of these undergrads? Just help me understand as a recruit, kind of thing. And if there's honest discourse, then there's a chance for it. But if it's going to be doubling down, then there are plenty of places to go where you can not have to worry about a coach doubling down on what was and just grinding you out of what your potential could be.
I think it's important to topic right there too, is the idea that the recruit asks tough questions, because if you're going to get one time in a coach's world where they're going to be at their nicest to you, it's going to be in the recruiting process. And so if you can't ask a tough question at that point, how are you going to ask the tough questions, before your conference or after your conference meet or after NCAAs? It's not going to get easier. Ask the tough questions early on in the process.
And I can't tell you, I just to build off that, because I actually am advising kids on a daily basis on what to do with recruiting, how often they won't ask direct questions in the recruiting process, and they hurt themselves by doing it. They don't help themselves. They think they're helping themselves. They're worried that they're going to mess things up. But even if it's a simple question, like I can think of a more positively oriented question than a little less confrontational than the one Eric asked, that I think is still should get you the answer. If you go like, hey, I want to achieve, X and Y international success. Give me an example of how that's gone at Stanford, and see what they come up with, and is that story, do you go, when you check the facts on that story, do you go, okay, there's a path for me there or not? Or just even more simply, just ask, this is the number one question. We're getting a little off topic, but just how many kids don't ask a school, am I good enough to be recruited by you? And if not, how good do I have to be? Just those kind of simple questions, just to check, where are you? Are you, are you at the top of the pile of their recruiting? Are you somebody that they're maybe will, if you do well, maybe we'll let you walk on here? And then nobody just asks these questions. And then they get to the end and they're like, oh man, I got ghosted in the recruiting process. It's you never checked where you were in the recruiting process the entire time.
Right on. And to steer this back into what we've been talking about too is, like you said, where are these people falling? You just said he's an NCAA coach doing the international, he's doing an Olympic. Where did those pro swimmers fall within this dynamic? Especially you got, 8 weeks till NCAAs, we got 6 weeks until conference, whatever it is. How are they getting treated? How are there's that balance, are they driving to one pool and driving back to the other? Like we were talking about the other day with one Stanford coach, where you're you got to drive to a whole nother pool. Are they all here? Who's getting the attention? Who's dealing with who? Who's the graduate assistant that's going to be covering all the freshmen? Oh, it's a graduate assistant, not a head coach? No, you won't see them. And so I think it's part of the deal too, again, where's the allegiance going to go? And where's the time and energy going to go within that program? And are they splitting too much of it? Maybe that's why some people fall through the cracks. How can, like you talked about earlier, how can people also go, I'm overtrained? It's like you have a coach on top of you that should know you by now. You've been in the program more than a week or two.
Yeah, you got a couple coaches, not that many swimmers. All right. And as we said, Greg, don't listen. Joel is good. Chris is bad. Eric, kind of bad. Okay. So,
sketchy.
we're not, the jury's still out on Eric.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for being willing to do this, take this conversation here, and for being willing to go back and forth on it. I hope everybody enjoys listening except for Greg. And, maybe he will enjoy listening. He won't enjoy listening if he does. Anyway.
Sorry, Greg.
Thanks, guys. Look next week. Hopefully I'm going to bank a few of these. I am going on vacation in 8 days, 7 days. So we've got to bank a few of these ahead of time. There may be some not so time sensitive podcasts coming up in the Swim Brief future. But you can look forward to some of those, some more stuff with John Bradley and Julie Bachman. And I don't know, maybe some surprises that I don't even know about. Thanks so much to everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.